I'm sorry. Okay. 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay, 16. Everybody? So we can start from the two dots. I think that we did a few lines, but we can start again. The Mishnah said about sukkah tacha sukkah. If you have a double decker sukkah, so it's possible because, as the pasuk says, basukos and the Gemara darshan that it means only one sukkah. You have to sit in one sukkah, not in two sukkah. Tanur Rabbanan, to start again. Basukos seishu, you should sit in sukkahs. V'lo basukah shetachas sukkah. V'lo basukah shetachas ha'ilan. V'lo basukah shetachas basuch habayis. Don't sit in a sukkah under a sukkah or under a tree or under a house. It has to be only one sukkah. Adrab, on the contrary, basukas tati mashma. The pasuk says basukos, which is plural. So if anything, you should darshan that you could sit in a double decker sukkah. The Gemara says, it says without a verb, so it could be written, it could be read in the singular. So therefore, we left darshan that you're not allowed to have a double decker sukkah. You can't have two floors. It has to be only one sukkah. Of course, on the top floor, you could sit in the top floor because you're only on the one schach. But if you're on the bottom floor, so you're covered by two layers of schach, so that's possible. The Gemara starts now. Amar Rav Yirmiyah. Pa'amim sheshteyen ksheros, pa'amim sheshteyen psulos, pa'amim shetachton ksheru v'alyon psula, pa'amim shetachton psula v'alyon ksheru. You can have all the different choices. You can have both of them puzzle, a double decker sukkah. You can have both of them puzzle, both of them kosher. Only the bottom one kosher and the top one puzzle. Only the top one kosher and the bottom one puzzle. It's possible to have all the mixes and matches, all the possibilities. So what the Yisod, the Gemara is going to say is that it's only puzzle if you have two schachos that are tzilas and ruba mechamasa. But if, let's say, the first case is going to be maybe a chiddush to everybody, that if the bottom one is chamos and ruba mitzilasa, the bottom one is not such a shady schach, and only the top one is a shady schach, so it's not called a double decker sukkah because the bottom one doesn't have two kosher schachs over it. You're only sitting under the top one. Here starts the list again. This is the first case we're talking about. Both you can sit on the bottom sukkah or the top sukkah, they're both kosher. What will be the case? That the bottom one is not such a shady sukkah. It's chamos and more sun than shade. The top one is more shade than sun. The and the top one is also within 20 amos. The Gemara is going to bring in this 20 amos because soon we're going to be talking about some other cases. But in this case, a simple case, both sukkahs are within 20 amos of the floor, and the bottom one is not shady sukkah. Wouldn't be enough shade to make it a kosher sukkah. So we're not going to consider it a double decker sukkah because there's only one deck. Only the top schach is the only schach. So far it's easy. Hope they'll continue being easy. The next case is pamim sheshteim psulos. What's going to be the case that both of them are puzzle? A regular case, we have a double decker sukkah. Only the bottom one is puzzle because that's double decker. But when you're sitting in the top one, you're on the top deck. You only have one. But the more is going to say there could be a possibility where the top one is also going to be puzzle. That's also going to be simple. Echidami, kigon the tarvayu tzilas and ruba mechamasa. Both of them are shady sukkahs. The Karmel Yonah l'malam yesrim. A side problem that the top one happens to be 20 amos. Rashi says here also that the 20 amos will be counted from the bottom floor. Even if it's not 20 amos from the floor, you have to be 20 amos from the bottom floor. So from the top bottom roof, that'll be your floor. And you can count as long as it's not going to be possible, it's just going to be 20 amos above the bottom roof. It means you start counting like if you have a sukkah on the roof. From your bottom, from your feet. Even though is at the bottom floor under you, but 20 yamas is only going to be counted. Like if you have a sukkah on top of an apartment building, it's okay. 20 yamas is from the floor. So if you're on top of the bottom floor, if it's a strong floor, it's less than moving mechamasa. So that's also pretty simple. That if you have two sukkahs and both of them are shady, so the bottom one is possible because it's a sukkah under a sukkah, and the top one that is 20 yamas too high, it's above 20 yamas, so it's also possible. So that also easy. The third case, we can have a case where the bottom one is kosher and the top one is possible. Hechi dami. That will be the case that bottom one is kosher and the top one is possible. Again, you're not allowed to have a sukkah tach a sukkah. You can't have a double decker sukkah. The bottom one is shady. The top one is not shady. So we understand already why the bottom one is kosher, because it's not a double decker. You're in the bottom one, which is shady, but the top one is not.
We did say the beams, that the tree stumps under that particular place, you can't be.
We're not talking about this is not schach pasal. You're talking about trees which branches which are schach pasal because it's mechuber. Here we're talking about schach kosher, just that it's not enough. Chamas and Ruba Mesilas means that it's not enough shade. There's no schach pasal over here. That's what it seems to say. So again, top line, the bottom one is shady, enough shade. The top one is not shady. It's schach kosher, kosher schach, but it's not enough. The comment Tarvayu Basal Chesrim. This Tarvayu is a question of the Gersa. Rashi has this Gersa. We'll learn Rashi today. Just to point out that Taisus argues and he changed this word, the Tarvayu. But we'll learn the way it says it. Comment Tarvayu Basal Chesrim. Both of them. Even the top schach is also within 20. And what are we going to say? That the bottom one is kosher because it's not called the double decker sukkah, because only the bottom one is shady. The top one is not enough shade, so it's not called the double decker. The top one is puzzle. Why is the top one puzzle? Because it doesn't have enough shade. Even though it's within 20 yamas, but there's not enough shade. Also makes sense. Again, the bottom one, I would have wanted to put a diagram for this, but just to imagine it, that the bottom one is a shady sukkah, the top one is not so shady. So the bottom one is not called the sukkah tach sukkah because only one layer is shady. The top one is not a kosher sukkah because it doesn't have enough shade. And even though it's within 20, it doesn't help. It doesn't. The bottom one is not affected because it's not two sukkahs, not two schachos. Also, simple. And the fourth case, this is the standard sukkah tach sukkah. This is a partial case. The case that the bottom one is kosher, the bottom one is puzzle. Both of them are shady sukkahs. The top one is within 20 yamas. So the top one is kosher because it's a kosher sukkah. The bottom one is puzzle because it's a double sukkah. And you can't have a sukkah tach sukkah. The truth is that the last case is the simple case of sukkah tach sukkah. And the rest of the cases we're saying that the first case, we're saying that if the bottom schach is not a shady sukkah, so it's not called the sukkah tach sukkah. So you can sit wherever you want because you're only under one shade, only under the top shade. And the Gemara asks right away that all the cases didn't tell us any chiddush. The Gemara says pshita, that all these cases were simple. There was no chiddush that we learned from all these cases. It goes without saying that it's only called the sukkah tach sukkah. Both of them is and ruba mechamasa. We know that over 20 yamas is puzzle. So where's the chiddush over here? The Gemara says the third case is the chiddush. So we'll do it again. The Gemara says the chiddush is if the bottom one is kosher, the case of the third case that the bottom one is kosher. What did the Gemara say? Just to go for a couple of lines. This was the top line is the case we're going on. And both of them are within 20 yamas. The bottom one is shady, the top one is not, and both of them are within 20 yamas. So the bottom one is kosher because only one schach. The top one is puzzle because it's not shady. It doesn't have enough schach. It's Hamas and Ruba Mitzilasa. So why is that a chiddush? And the Gemara says that's chiddush. Rashi learns the chiddush is that if the top one would be above 20, it does puzzle the bottom one. Again, you have the bottom one is shady, top one is not shady, but what will be if it will be above 20? The Gemara does say that Bukami Tavayi, right?
The top one.
The top one is above 20. So does that affect the bottom one? So
it's not kosher, that shouldn't affect it.
So that's very nice. That's a possibility. Chaim David is saying that there's a possibility that even if the top one is above 20, it should not affect the bottom one. And that's what Tosfos holds. But Rashi, we're going with Rashi. Rashi says that it would affect the bottom one. That the schach above 20 is also puzzle schach. That's the concept the Gemara is going to hint to. We know there are things as puzzle schach, like things that are a tree. A tree is puzzle schach. whatever you have, steel beams, the puzzle schach. How about schach above 20? There's nothing puzzle inherently in the schach. The schach is kosher schach, but it's above 20. The fact that it's located above 20 yamas does not make it considered puzzle schach that it'll affect the bottom sukkah. The bottom
I
sukkah.
think I do have a picture of this.
Okay, please do. Moshe, what are you saying?
If it's above 20 for the top one, and it's only above 20 for the bottom one, how can that be?
Yes, but the bottom one has its own schach. The bottom one has kosher schach.
Oh,
And he says, I don't need you. I don't need you.
gotcha.
What is the picture showing?
It's a
bottom-
sukkah on top of a sukkah, and it shows that this is 20 amos up to here. So it says here sukkah pasula.
So the top
Sukkah-
one is a puzzle sukkah. The question was, does it affect the bottom sukkah? Does it affect the bottom sukkah? Is the bottom sukkah affected by the top sukkah? The top sukkah is really, it's not kosher schach because it's above 20, but inherently the schach, the material of the sukkah is not a puzzle. So is
Yeah.
the bottom sukkah affected? Is it called schach puzzle? So Rashi is going to say that it is. That if the top sukkah is above 20, even though it's chamas and ruba mitzilas, even though it's not shady, it's not called a sukkah tacha sukkah. That problem you don't have because the top sukkah is not kosher. But the issue that might be is that the top schach is called schach puzzle. So it's like you have schach puzzle, we'd have a tree on top of the schach. So we take away everything that's opposite the kosher schach and say it's as if it's not here. So that issue, Rashi is going to say, does affect this over here also. We're saying the bottom one is Silas and Ruba. The pictures, they make a mistake, these pictures, just after, it's a general thing about these printed pictures. They make it very beautiful with all the pachivkas and everything. We don't need the walls over here. The walls are we don't see the issue because they made the walls. But we have to use our imagination. But it does help more than nothing. But the issue over here is that the bottom schach is a kosher schach. So the bottom schach is enough shade. The top one is above 20, and also it doesn't have enough shade.
Therefore, it's yesh kosher because it's out of this.
Yes, the bottom one. You look at the bottom one.
It's not enough.
Right. The one at the bottom sukkah, he says, I'm not a sukkah tacha sukkah. I'm not saying he looks up. He says, I'm not sitting in two schachas. The top one, the bottom one is a shady schach. That's kosher. The top one is not shady. The top one is chamas and ruba mitzilasa. So he looks at it as not sukkah tacha sukkah. But Rashi is going to say that there is a problem that the schach above 20 yamas is considered schach pasal, and therefore all of your schach, which is opposite the schach pasal, we look at it as if it's not here. It's like under a branch of a tree. That even though you have a kosher sukkah, but if there's branches that are shady, even though it's not shady, even though it's a chamas and ruba mitzilasa, those branches we subtract all the schach of your kosher schach on the bottom sukkah as if it's not there because there's schach on top of it. That's what Rashi learns in the Gemara. So thank you, Levi Yaakov.
Obviously, if the top one is above 20 and it's meruba, then stay meruba mishinjo, whatever. Then for sure the bottom one is possible because it's like a tree.
Right. That was not because it's like because it's lost in chamas. You don't say that.
Any substance.
That was the second case. That was the second case that BM used. Your case you did it now was the second case. Second case that was the case where both of them salas and bubu mechamas, and the top one was above 20. So then, and if the top one will be, so then both of them are puzzle. That the Gemara did say. So now we're in the Gemara. Just see the Gemara again. The Gemara said pshita, top line in the screen. It goes without saying all the four cases are pasha. The Gemara says the third case is a chiddush. The chiddush is the third case, which the bottom one is kosher and the top one is puzzle. Which the Gemara said that the bottom one is shady, top one is not shady within 20. And mal the time when you might make a mistake and make exer that sometimes you'll use schach puzzle and combine that. Rashi says that means that sometimes the top schach might be above 20. The case that is kosher is the top schach is within 20. And that is true, that everything's simple. The bottom one is kosher, top one is puzzle. But you might have thought that the bottom one should be puzzle because sometimes the top schach, which he doesn't think makes a difference to him, he might think that the top schach, I don't need it, I don't care about it. Even if it's above 20, also will be kosher. Kamash Malan, that not goes there. Again, just to point out the end of the sugya, that Rashi says if the bottom schach is tzilas meruba, you have enough shade on the bottom schach. You don't have enough shade on the top schach, but it's above 20. So Rashi says it's considered schach puzzle, and the bottom sukkah is also going to be puzzle because you subtract all of the schach, which is opposite the top schach, and you don't have enough schach anymore. So it's not going to be a psul of sukkah tacha sukkah. It's going to be a psul of using schach puzzle. This one yesod Taisus argues on the Yisod, and he learns them all together different. He says that this is not schach pasel. Schach above 20 amos is not considered schach pasel. But that's the Rashi learns the Gemara, that it's only kosher if the top schach, which is chamas meruba, which is more sun than shade, is only kosher for the bottom sukkah if
It's in 20.
within 20. But if it be above 20, then it would pass the bottom sukkah also. That's the end of the Gemara.
How come the Gemara doesn't give its own answer to this case?
I'm not following.
Why doesn't the Gemara say the din?
The Gemara said,
Rashi says it's possible, and then Tosfos says it's mutter.
no,
It's
no.
kosher.
It depends on the gears. No. The Gemara,
Oh.
the way Rashi reads the Gemara says that is possible. That the Gemara says it's only kosher if the top one is within 20, and the Xer is you might use schach pasel when it's above 20. It's not so clear in the Gemara, but that's what Rashi learns that nigzer bilma masav schach pasel b'hadis schach kosher means schach pasel if it will be above 20. And it goes back to that line over there. The first one on the line is second word. I'm sorry, this word tavayu over here. That Rashi has, and the third line of the Gemara, second word, Tarvayu. So the Gemara says it's only kosher when both of them are within 20. But if the top one would be over 20, then the bottom one would also be puzzle because it's combining with the schach. That's the end of that sugya. New sugya, easy sugya now. Kama yeheg ben sukkah l'sukkah. It says utei tachton l'psula. It says in the Mishnah that a sukkah is possible. Double decker sukkah is possible. So if you have two sukkahs, 2 layers of schach, it's possible. How much space has to be within the 2 layers of schach in order to make the bottom one a double-decker sukkah? How much space has to be there between the two schachos in order to consider the bottom one a sukkah tachasukkah? Any opinions before we start? How much would you think? Love would be a nice choice. If it's more than 3 tefachim, it's separated. But the Gemara's not even going to mention that, which I don't know why not.
What's the question?
Kama yehei ben sukkah l'sukkah v'tei tachton l'psula. How much space is between the 2 schachos? How much space between the 2 layers? You have double decker sukkah. How much space? How about if you have an inch between the 2 layers of schach? 2 inches, 3 inches, 10 inches, 3 feet. How much? How much is going to be the issue of making it a sukkah tachas sukkah? So the Gemara is going to say 3 opinions. Amar Huna tefach. A tefach already is considered 2 schachos. If you have a layer of schach and then the space of a tefach and then another layer of schach, the bottom one is possible because it's a sukkah tachas sukkah. Of course, the top one is not a sukkah, but it's a schach, and there's a space that's considered an oil. And he brings, what do we have here? A tefach between the 2 layers of schach. Okay, if you look, that's what you see. 2 layers of schach with a tefach in between. Yashikov, thank you. The Tanan, Shekain, where is that? Shekain, Masina Bali Tumah Tefach. You find by Adina Va'ohel by Tumah that something to be considered a Noah has to be a Tefach off the ground. The Tanan, Tefach, Rum Tefach, maybe it's a Tumah because it's Bifnei Tumah. If you have a board which is a Tefach by a Tefach, a length and width, and a Rum Tefach, it has to be a Tefach off the ground. Then it's considered an Ohel. Maybe it's a Tumah because it's Bifnei Tumah. Maybe it's a Tumah means that if you have under this Ohel, you have Tumah and a Kli of some sort. So then it's considered an ohel, and the tumah will transfer under the whole ohel, and the kli will become tameh. And also chosis b'fnei tumah, if you have tumah under the ohel, and you have something on top of the ohel, so the ohel is considered a separation, and the tumah is not going to go through. But if it's less than the height of a tefach, well, maybe it's not considered an ohel. And even if you have 2 things under this board, but the whole board is only less than a tefach off the ground, so then it's not considered an ohel, and it won't transfer tumah to under the board, under the ohel. And also if there's something on top, the tumah will go straight through. That's not considered an oil. So what do we bring from this din? That by tumah there's a din of tefach to be considered an oil. So too he says a sukkah tachas sukkah. Once it's a tefach, it's considered a separation, and the top one is considered an oil, and the bottom one is going to be possible because it's a double decker sukkah. That was the first opinion.
More than
a tefach.
A tefach.
Second opinion. Rav Chisda Rabba Bar Avun Amri Arba 4 tefachim. 4 tefachim. Only if there's a separation between the 2 schachos to be 4 tefachim, then is it considered a sukkah tachas sukkah. But if it's less than 4 tefachim, it's not considered a double decker sukkah on the bottom. You consider the bottom sukkah as long as it's not 4 tefachim between the 2 roofs. Why is that? We don't consider something significant, the place significant less than 4 tefachim. We had this Gemara also in other places by Eruvin. In order to consider 2 places separated, it's considered 4 tefachim. Less than 4 tefachim is not considered a significant amount, and therefore it's going to be considered 1 schach. If you have 2 layers of schach within 4 tefachim, they're considered 1 layer of schach. So machlokas already. One says 1 tefach, one says 4 tefachim. A third opinion.
I'm sorry, Rebbe, why by Chanukah, Chanukah, you can't put it less than 3?
A different subject. Different subject.
But there's 3, right? By Chanukah.
It's not a Gemara either. That's only Rishonim say better to put it above 3, but it's not a Gemara. And the third opinion is Shmuel Lamar Asara, 10 tefachim. It's only a problem. It's only called a double decker sukkah if the difference between the two schachos is 10 tefachim. My time with the Shmuel.
It changes the Rishut.
He says differently. He says easier. My time with the Shmuel, Techshev Kach Psula, Machshev Basara, a Psula Basara. What's it called? Sukkah Tach Sukkah. So it has to be a kosher sukkah. He says it's only called a double decker sukkah if it's top one would be a kosher sukkah. What's called a kosher sukkah? That he has 10 tefachim. Very simple. He's not looking at tumah, he's not looking at other, he's looking at sukkah. The psula is a double sukkah, a real double sukkah. Not just a double schach, a double sukkah. So it's only called a sukkah if it's 10 tefachim high. That's like the bottom floor has to be 10 tefachim. So if you have 10 tefachim on the top floor, that's called the sukkah tachas. The bottom one is a sukkah tachas sukkah. But if the top one is going to be less than 10 tefachim, even though it's called an ohel or it's called significant, then it's another roof. It's not a problem having another roof. It has to be another sukkah. So it will be kosher if there's not a difference between the two sukkahs, 10 tefachim. And that's how he passed. He passed like Shmuel. That it's only called the sukkah tachas sukkah if there's 10 tefachim in between the two schachs. Tanan, the Gemara is a kasha on Shmuel from our Mishnah, and also Agav is going to explain our Mishnah. The Mishnah ended off on Tesam with Beis that maybe we could jump there a second. We have the Mishnah. What are we holding over here? All the way in the beginning, on top of the Mishnah, when it brought down the Allah sukkah, so it ended off. If there are no, the words literally mean if there are no livers, no dwellers, nobody's living in the top sukkah, so then the bottom one is kosher. And the Gemara is going to use that to figure out what Shmuel is talking about. Tanan, top line on the screen. That's sort of Mishnah. What does he mean to say? If there's nobody living over there, does it make a difference if someone's actually living there? Is it not going to be called a double-decker sukkah? It's not called 2 floors if someone's living over there. You could have an apartment building, you have many big floors. People are not living over there. It's still called many floors. Even with you and Mamish, actual dwellers, people living there, other than you and Kagami, does that make the difference if people are living over there or not? It shouldn't make a difference if you have a double-decker sukkah. It's possibly no one's living there. Can't mean that.
He's changing the schach to floor by sleeping there.
And if no one's sleeping there? If no
Yes,
one's,
but it's obviously you can't sleep there, so therefore it's a floor.
you're talking about if someone can or not. That the Gemara's taking it slow. The Gemara says if someone first. The Mishnah makes it sound if someone's actually there. If someone's physically living over there, that surely doesn't make a difference. Doesn't mean if someone's living there or not living there. It means if it's fitting to live, it's possible to live over there.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. But the Gemara, yes, it's right. But the words literally don't say that. The Gemara made a chiddush. But you said it's pashut, but the Gemara sees it as a chiddush. The words say if they are Durin. Durin means livers.
Yeah.
So the Gemara says it means so that does make a difference. So it means if it's roy to live on. So kol sheni roy l'div. If it's not livable, if Yehuda says if it's not livable, so then it's not a sukkah tachas sukkah. The bottom one is not puzzle. Only the top one is livable. If the top one is not livable, the bottom one is not a puzzle for a sukkah tachas sukkah. But the Gemara says, what does that mean? That means that it's not 10 tefachim high. What does it mean it's not livable? Not livable. That seems to mean that it's not 10 tefachim high, which is very nice. Shmuel is very happy. But then the Gemara is saying, but that's only Yehuda talking. There's a machlokes going on. The Mishnah says that according to Tanakh, there's a problem, and Yehuda says it's only a problem if the bottom one is livable, if the top one is livable. That would seem that according to Tanakh, it's a problem even though it's not livable. So Shmuel, it's very nice what you're saying according to Yehuda, but the Rabbanan argue. So you're in trouble now. That if Shmuel's psul, that if it's less than 10 tefachim, if it's less than tefachim, it's not puzzle, it's only according to Yehuda. Echidami, the logo bar Asara. Doesn't that mean that it's not 10 tefachim high? So Yehuda holds if the top one is not 10 tefachim high, so then the bottom one is kosher. Doesn't that psula? Doesn't that seem to imply that according to the Tanakama, it will be possible, even though the bottom one will be a sukkah tachas sukkah, even if the top one is not livable, less than 10 tefachim. So it's a kasha and Shmuel. The other ones are Chisda, Rabba, Ravuna. They can be happy with the Mishnah. That it depends if it's livable or not. If Yehuda holds it depends if it's livable. Tanakh holds even though it's not livable, it's still possible. That's what they agree. 1 tefach, 4 tefachim, doesn't have to be livable. But Shmuel holds that if it's not livable, it's kosher on the bottom, even according to Tanakh. How's the Mishnah? Second line. No, if it doesn't have 10 tefachim, then surely the bottom one is kosher. Shmuel says everybody holds that the bottom. Everyone holds that the bottom one is going to be kosher if the top one doesn't have 10 tefachim. So what is the argument in the Mishnah? If it's not about the height surely it has to have the height of 10 tefachim in order to make the bottom one puzzle. But the issue is how strong is the sukkah? Is it possible to hold up mattresses, pillows? The person is going to come inside to live over there. Is it possible to hold them up? That's the machlokes. The Tanna Kama says that even if it's not strong enough to hold somebody up, still the bottom one is called a sukkah tachas sukkah. Of course, it has to have the 10 tefachim height. And Rav Yehuda says no, that if it's not strong, the bottom one is kosher. It's not called a double sukkah only if it's usable physically. The Gemara is still not happy. You want to say it's still the same issue. That according to Tanna Kama, you say if it's not strong enough to actually physically hold up anybody, the pillows and the mattresses and the people, it's still the bottom one is still called double decker sukkah. So then you're back to the same issue again. That it doesn't have to be roy l'dira. You say that it has to be roy l'dira. Roy l'dira, no difference between the height of 10 tefachim and then it should be strong. If you say the reason why less than 10 tefachim is because it's not usable, so it's not usable if it's not strong either. So what are they arguing about? The more answers, that it's true. Everybody holds that if it's not tall enough to be a sukkah, 10 tefachim, it's not called a sukkah tachas sukkah. And if it's not strong enough to hold anything up, surely it's also not a sukkah tachas sukkah. You're right, everything's true. One machlokes, if it's shaky, a little bit shaky, that it could hold up the mattresses and the pillows, but it's not the most sturdy thing. So according to Tanna Kama, it's still called livable, and therefore the bottom one we call it sukkah tachas sukkah. Yehuda says no, it has to be mamish livable, it should be comfortable, and someone walks on top, no one's scared that it's going to fall down, and otherwise it will be kosher. End of the Gemara, what happened? That we pass like Shmuel, that it's only called a sukkah tachas sukkah if it's livable on top, and that means it should be 10 tefachim high, and also that it should be strong. But this machlok is how strong, and then we pass like the Rabbanan that even if it's somewhat usable, even though it's not mamish sturdy, it's also enough to be considered usable al de'at, and therefore the bottom one will be puzzle. So that's the end of the sugya of sukkah tachas sukkah. We learned that a sukkah tachas abayis is not good sukkah tachas ilan, and the pashtus would be that even if the sukkah will be a kosher sukkah, that you have silas and bubim lechamasa, all of the schach that's opposite the non-kosher schach is deducted. You take away that schach, and only if you have enough schach left on the bottom will it still be kosher. As far as sukkah tachas sukkah, dafke if it's 10 tefachim in between, and dafke if it's strong to hold somebody, even al de'at chak, that'll make the bottom one puzzle. We learned some things on agav that as far as tumah goes, it's 1 tefach. As far as the makom chashiv, it's 4 tefachim. But as far as asug, it has to do with 10 tefachim. Next Mishnah. Pires aleha sadin b'pnei achama o tachtem b'pnei anashor. The word is not nesher, the word is neshor. Nesher is eagle. Neshor means things that are dropping into the sukkah. So if you spread out a sheet on top of the sukkah, you have a kosher sukkah, enough schach, and you put a sheet on top because it still was too sunny, so you put a sheet over the schach. Or under the schach in order to catch whatever's falling. Twigs. Neshor means to be no share, to fall in. Twigs, leaves are falling in. So you want to put a sheet under the schach to catch all those things. It's going to say that as puzzle.
So I have 2 pictures, one of each one, if you want to see.
Okay, please.
Okay, so this is on top.
On top, over the schach, or under the schach. There's your card. Thank you. Good. So all these are puzzle.
It's fully the no chama tachat merubah.
There's
no chama bichlal.
Does make a difference. I mean, I'm not following. The sukkah is a kosher sukkah. You have a lot of schach. And the sheet is a sheet, a full sheet.
You don't see any sun through.
What's the problem?
You have to have some sun.
You have to have some
You
sun.
have to see the star.
Well, we don't know that yet. You're a little advanced, but everything's as kosher also. That's also.
Since my first year in your
Huh?
Yerushalayim, 45 years ago.
White sheet.
Yeah, white sheet. Yeah. But they have nothing to do with sun. You don't need sun. You need shade. You need shade. And he has shade. He says, I have a kosher sukkah. Look at all that. Look at. No, we don't know anything about it. And also, even if you don't see the stars, it's kosher also. So you have a good schach, but you have a sheet. And he says, my schach is kosher schach. So we tell him, it's a kosher schach, but the sheet is also just as good. And it's puzzled. The sheet is puzzled because it's some couple tumah Rashi brings down. We're going to see soon that something which is susceptible to tumah is not kosher for schach. So it's true. It's like a tree. It's like you're putting a branch on top. And even though you have enough schach, it's still puzzled because the sheet was giving you shade and not the schach. Also, kinov. Kinov is the same word as canopy. You have a bed inside the sukkah, you have a canopy over your bed, fancy bed. I have a canopy, and you say, I have a sukkah, I'm inside the sukkah. So we say it's very nice, you're in the sukkah, but you're inside the canopy. It means there's something separating you and the sukkah, that your canopy is considered an oil, which is separating between you and the schach, and therefore, thank you, that's good. And even though you have a nice sukkah, beautiful, but you have a canopy over your bed and you're sleeping under the canopy, you're not sleeping under the schach. So the sukkah is kosher, but you're not in the sukkah. Yes, you go. Maybe it's way. I don't know yet.
What happens if it's a net? Like, we used to, when I was a kid, we used to have a mosquito net,
It's coming up, I think.
which you can see.
Maybe not, but I don't know today, but we'll be seeing more about that. The Gemara said, the Mishnah continues, but if there's a kind of canopy, the way we showed the canopy just now, the way Yaakov showed us was that it was flat. It had four posts in the four corners of the bed, and you had a flat canopy. That's what a canopy is, kinov canopy. But in a klitin, I don't know the word in English, but it means it's going to be a slanty kind of a canopy. If you have a picture, that would help us. And it means that you have not four posts, you have only two posts, one by the head of the bed and one by the feet of the bed, and you have a bar that goes across, and you have a sheet that goes across. Here we have it. Here we have that. That's good. Okay. So here you have the canopy, and here it says that it's kosher.
What? That's good. That's canopy.
That's not klitin. It says that it's kosher. We're going to see the Gemara. The Gemara is going to talk about the height. So this looks pretty high. We'll see that maybe it's not kosher because it might be too high. We're going to see something about 10 tvachim. But so far, for the Mishnah alone, that's good. That canopies, when it's flat, that's when it's possible. But when it's slanty, if any better word than that, so it's slanty, so then it's kosher, because that's not considered an oil. The fact that
it's slanty but not completely down.
I'm not sure.
That's slanty, and that's the one that's puzzle.
No, the flat one is puzzle. The flat one is the one that makes you a gog. It makes a roof over you, and it's separating between you and the schach, so you're not allowed to sleep in the bed that has a flat canopy.
Oh.
But if it has a slanty canopy, then you are allowed to.
That's one point.
Yes, the way that Leib Yaakov showed us. It's not considered a ohel. Since it's not flat, ain't lo gag, it's not considered a flat, so it's not considered an ohel. It's separating between you and the schach. In order to be separation, it has to be considered an ohel. Ohel means a tefach at least.
Even though it is separated.
Yeah, there's a machitza, but it's like a cover. We'll call it a cover. You're allowed to sleep in the cover in a sukkah, right? Even though you're something separated, it's not separated. It's called the cover. It's not called the ohel, and that's going to be the sort of agama. What's called the ohel? What's called the cover? And this, if it's not called a ohel, it's not separating between you and the schach. So you'd be allowed to sleep in that canopy, which is not. I choose the word not klitin. Kinov is canopy, which means flat, and nowadays, I don't know the word canopy. Canopy might include both of these things. I call the canopy. But in the Mishnah, kinov means that it's flat, and naklitin means that it's a slanty. I'll call it a canopy. If anybody has any better word, so we're looking for that. And naklitin, that over there is not considered a flat roof, and therefore you'd be allowed to sleep in the bed, which has a slanty canopy. Amar Chisda. Back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah spoke about putting a sheet over the sukkah because of the sun or because of the twigs that are falling in. Amar Chisda. A third choice. How about if you made it because it's beautiful? You have a beautiful tapestry. You want to put it under the schach. Same thing as before. That it's a whole sheet, but it's a beautiful sheet, and you're putting it in order to decorate the sukkah. How about that? Everybody probably would say that it's not good, but it says that it's good. It's only not good under the sukkah, under the schach, if you're doing it in order to catch the twigs. To beautify the sukkah, even though it's a full sheet, and someone comes into your sukkah, he says, "Where's the schach?" He says, "It's behind the sheet." Thank you, Leib Yaakov. There you have the going to the sukkah. You don't see the schach.
You mean in this and the other two? Then when we had the one on top and the one.
Because this is beautifying. It's going to beautify the schach. This sukkah.
It's like decoration.
It's a decoration. So it's a big decoration, but it's in fact it's the whole sukkah decoration. But it's kosher
You mean the whole area of the group?
You see, look at Leib Yaakov's picture.
Yeah,
the whole thing.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know there's any schach. You go inside, you don't see the schach. So it's kosher. It's kosher. That's the halacha.
I would have called the guy shaking.
There'll be a small condition, but a pretty small condition.
What do you mean? I thought we don't hold like that. That's the halacha? We do? I thought we had to make sure that it wasn't.
We're waiting to finish the sentence, but you're right.
Finish the sentence. I thought that I've been breaking my neck to make sure that the things don't hang on too low. That's one
That's
thing. That's
true,
a different thing.
That's true. That's true.
But also that it shouldn't be so wide. And when I make Kiddush, I always say, make sure you're not under a decoration. Make sure
I
you're
don't
under a
think so.
schach.
The Gemara is going to say, Levi Yaakov is jumping, that the Gemara is going to say, as soon as a condition, it should be within 4 Tvachim of the schach. That's true. We're going to pass like that. But that's all. It's a condition. It has to be within 4 Tvachim of the schach. But if you have that, it's allowed to cover the whole schach also. As far as I know.
But then you're taking the kula of four, as opposed to 10, we're saying 4.
Yeah, we're going to get to that Gemara soon. So the Gemara said, Amar Rav Chisda, Lashanu El B'nei Nashor. The Gemara has no problem. The Gemara says it's okay. The Gemara says that it's fine. It's called Noisukah. Amar Rav Chisda, Lashanu El B'nei Nashor, V'nosuk Sheva. It's only a problem if you're doing it in order to catch the twigs, but if you're doing it in order to beautify the sukkah, it's kosher, even though it's under the whole schach. Shtita, and Gemara even says it's pashut. It goes without saying. The Mishnah says so. If B'nei Nashor tonight, it only says it's a problem if it's doing it in order to catch things. So how come it was a chiddush even? The Gemara says, you might have thought that the Mishnah means also to beautify, it also would have been puzzled. It just says an example, which is a usual example. People put a sheet under in order to catch the leaves. That is dafka. If it's on the shore, if you're doing it to beautify the sukkah, it's kosher. The Gemara thinks it has a proof to Rav Chisda. Let's bring a proof to him. It says in the Brisa, you had kosher schach, enough schach, kosher schach, enough, and you beautified it. Itra, you beautified it with krumen. Krumen and sadina, both of them mean some kind of tapestry, some kind of a decorative curtain or sheet. I don't know the difference. Why she says one is oreg, one is rokem. I'm not sure. Different kinds of tapestries, and also other kind of examples. That's really all we need. We can stop right here. It says that you beautified the sukkah with a tapestry, with a sadin, a sheet. So it says it's kosher. But we'll finish the brayso already. The Talabah goes in shkedim, afarsakin, rimonim, pachila anovim, atava shol shibolin, yenu, shmanu v'slosos. He made all kinds of decorations. He put in nuts, almonds, peaches, maybe afarsakin peaches.
It's talking about some kind of a sardine, and now it's talking about other things. Right?
Oh, yeah, all the kinds of decorations. You could use a sardine. You could use all kinds of fruits. Rimonim, pomegranates, pachila anovim, clusters of grapes, atava shol shibolin. Shibolin means stalks of wheat. And yenu, shmanim, slosos. You had bottles of wine or bottles of oil and solas, ground wheat. All these things, asur l'stapik man, means the issue of the brayso is not about if it's kosher. The brayso takes for granted that it's kosher. Of course it's kosher. But the issue is that you're not allowed to benefit from the schach. Just like you're not allowed to benefit from the asay sukkah we had yesterday, a few days ago. Also, you're not allowed to benefit from the noise sukkah. The decorations are also asur to benefit from them. Asur l'stapik man, you're not allowed to benefit from them until after sukkahs.
Oh, they have to stay there the whole week.
You're not allowed to benefit from them. You're not allowed to take off a grape. You have grapes hanging in the sukkah, so you figure I'll take a grape.
But it's only noise, not for halacha.
That's what we're talking about. We're talking about noise sukkah is also the benefit. That's what it says over here. Before a couple of days ago, we had that you're not allowed to benefit from the asay sukkah. Now we're saying you're not allowed to even benefit from the noise sukkah, even from the beauty decorations of the sukkah. Until after Shmini Atzeres. Even Shmini Atzeres, though Shmini Atzeres is not sukkahs, only 7 days of sukkahs. Shmini Atzeres, you don't sit in the sukkah. But still, you're not allowed to benefit from the noise sukkah until after Shmini Atzeres. Also, the Brisa says, the Mir Snalem Makol Fit to know. As you made a Tanai, that when sukkahs was coming in, you made a Tanai, I'm not separating myself from this noise. I still want to eat them. So you're not dedicating it to become noise sukkah, and then you're allowed to eat it. And even though it's hanging in the sukkah, it's not noise sukkah, it's my grapes hanging over there. Anyway, what do we want from this price? It says that for Pashut, it goes without saying that you're allowed to use tapestries in the sukkah. That means that isn't it covering the whole schach? But the Moshe says no, it's not a proof. Maybe it's not talking about that it's under the schach. Maybe it's hanging on the wall. You put a nice tapestry on the wall, so that wouldn't be a right to have Chisda. So the Gemara deflects the proof, but the Moshe of Chisda said so, and nobody argues. The Gemara just want to bring a proof, and that the Gemara says it's no proof, but you don't see any kasha, and that's the halacha that no sukkah is kosher, even if it's covering the whole schach. Another point the Gemara talks about, itmar, no sukkah, enu matin b'sukkah. Ravashi or menasad matin. We had a point about minimizing the height of the sukkah. We had 2 points. One is that sometimes the sukkah is too high, more than 20 amas. Sometimes the sukkah is too small, less than 10 tvachim. So we spoke about things that could minimize the height. Here it says that no sukkah does not minimize. If you have a sukkah which is higher than 20 amas, even though you have the decorations and the decorations are coming into within 20 amas, that doesn't make that the sukkah is kosher. The schach is not within 20 amas. Even though decorations come to within 20 amas, that's not considered minimizing the sukkah. Also, the other way, Rashi says, if you have the sukkah, which is 10 tefachim, a kosher sukkah, but now if you put decorations hanging on the from the schach, now it's less than 10 tefachim. You might say that it's not any more usable sukkah, it's less than 10 tefachim. No, we had the case before, if you have hutzin, if you have some of the leaves of the palm branches coming into the sukkah, we said that it's ruch, that's not comfortable, and it's not a kosher sukkah. But here the Gemara says decorations don't bother people. Here the Gemara says that the noise sukkah don't minimize the sukkah, not less than 20 amas to make it kosher, and not less than 10 tefachim to make it possible. But if they're hanging on the sides of the wall, and now that you have this protrusions on the sides of the wall, it's not anymore 7 by 7 tefachim. You had a sukkah which is 7 by 7, then you put tapestries on, and it takes off now it's less than 7 by 7. So then it is mamait, because Rashi says you don't have a place to come in, you don't have enough room to get in. You need 7 by 7. So then it would take away the size of the sukkah if the noise sukkah on the sides are minimizing from the 7 by 7 tefachim. The Gemara says a story over here. This is top line Minyamin, not Binyamin, Minyamin. That was the name of Rav Ashi's servant. The servant of Rav Ashi, his name was Binyamin, so his ksonis, his cloak, got soaked in water, and he put it over the sukkah in order to dry out. He somehow his coat got wet, his cloak, he put it over the sukkah in order to dry out. Rashi told him, take it off the sukkah. The Lolaim will come people might pass by, and they're going to think that we're putting a sheet over the sukkah. It says in the Mishnah that a sadin is not good. This is not a sadin, this is a clothing. But people might think that we're using that over the sukkah, and they'll think that clothing is not kosher for sechach because it's the kabel tumah. It's vulnerable to tumah, even though it's made out of something which grows, pishtan or tzemer. Sorry, pishtan. Tzemer anyway wouldn't be good because it's not gedula karka. That's something which grows from the ground. But even though it grows from the ground, it's still possible because of the kabel tumah. And people are going to pass by. They're going to say, Rav Ashi, the big Rav of the city, he puts clothing on top for his schach. But he told him, people see that it's wet. The servant asked, everyone sees that it's wet. They see that I put it there and only in order to dry up. So Rav Ashi said, yeah, that's what I mean. I meant to say when it dries up. Now that it's wet, everyone sees that it's only there to dry. No one's going to think that I'm using that for schach. But once it dries up, people might think that I'm leaving it there and I'm using it as schach. And what does it mean? That even though there's schach kosher under it, but if you put a sadin on top, it's not kosher. Even though you have schach. The sadin, he said, makes the schach possible, even if you have good schach. So he says, I mean to say, after it dries, then people will think that it's possible. New Gemara, also about the noise sukkah, the decorations. Ithman, this is what Levi Yaakov was referring to before. Noise sukkah, if the sukkah is separated from the schach, 4 tefachim. He said before that noise sukkah is kosher, and even we said even if it covers under the whole schach, it's kosher. But here it says that if it's separated 4 tefachim from the schach, it's 4 tefachim away from the schach, so then it's a machlokis. The word muflag means separated. Noise sukkah muflagim min arba. If the noise sukkah is 4 tefachim separated from the schach, Rav Nachman maksheva, Rav Chisda Rabba Bar Huna ami psula. Rav Nachman holds this kosher even though it's 4 tefachim away, and Rav Chisda and Rabba Bar Huna hold that it's only considered batul to the schach only if it's within 4 tefachim. But if it's more than 4 tefachim, if it's 4 tefachim or more, then it's considered pasul. Pasul means that it's considered a separation between you and the schach, and it will be pasul. We pass like Rav Chisda, and therefore that's what Levi Yaakov was saying to make sure that all the decorations they start. I think it doesn't. Some people are machmir that the whole thing should be within 4 tefachim. I think it's not necessary. It should be that it starts within 4 tefachim. If you have a decoration, even though it's a big decoration, as long as it starts within 4 tefachim of the schach, it's kosher. Like Rav Chisda is saying that if it's more than 4 tefachim, then it's possible. Right.
As long as it starts within the 4,
it's good enough. Right. Rav Huna would say that. Who's that? Rav Nachman will say it's kosher even though it's more than 4 tefachim away. Even if it starts more than 4 tefachim, that one machmir. We have like Rav Chisda and Rav Huna that has to be starting within 4 tefachim of the schach. The Gemara says a story, a nice, interesting story. Rav Chisda, Rav Huna, Iklu the Beirish Kalusa. Rav Chisda and Rav Huna, they came to the house of the Beirish Kalusa, the exilarch. They were coming to be mechaber him. Yantif Cholamoy, they came to visit him. And Rav Nachman was over there. I think he was a son-in-law. I think Rav Nachman was a son. It doesn't say so over here, but I think Rav Nachman was a son-in-law of the Beirish Kalusa. So they needed a sukkah. They came to visit the Reish Kalusa on Sukkot, and they needed a sukkah. They're staying overnight. So Rav Nachman put them into a sukkah, which the decorations were 4 tefachim away from the schach. Rav Nachman holds that it's kosher, but they hold that it's not kosher. So he put them in a sukkah that he holds as kosher. he thought they're going to say something. Ishtiku, they were quiet. They didn't complain. He thought right away they're not going to complain. I'll get into a discussion about the sugya, but they didn't say anything. So he said that the Chachamim they retracted from their halacha. Means I know you used to hold that as possible. Now I see that you're not saying anything. Is that because you also hold like me that's kosher? No. It's not a kosher sukkah, but we're on the way to do a mitzvah. It means the fact they came to visit the Reish Galusa, they're on the way to do a mitzvah, and the luck is a party from a sukkah. So we have no sukkah. If this is the only sukkah that's available, so what should we do? We'll sleep in the house also. They said that it's not because we hold that as kosher. It's not kosher, but we'll put it from the sukkah. If you give us the kosher sukkah, we'll sleep in the kosher sukkah. No kosher sukkah. They could eat a meal. They put it from sukkah. Shluchim is part of the sukkah.
But they're not part from even if the mitzvahs to do a sukkah.
They have to stay by the Reish Galusa. They can't visit the Reish Galusa. They have no sukkah available, so they'll sleep in the street. They'll sleep in the house. They'll sleep in the posel sukkah. He's not saying because it's kosher. We hold that as possible. Maybe after that, Rav Nachman brought him into a kosher sukkah. According to that, maybe he took off the noise sukkah. He put it within 4 tvachim maybe.
He's a son-in-law, right?
I think he's a son-in-law of the Reish Galusa. I think that's what he was doing over there. But it doesn't say. Rashi doesn't say that. I think it was challenging what they're going to say. Maybe get into a discussion. Maybe they'll agree to me. But I think this is a machlokes. If you hold something as kosher and somebody else holds that and the Rav holds that it's treif, are you allowed to give it to him? You hold that as kosher. You hold that as treif. Are you allowed to give it to him? I think there's a sugya about that. But here, maybe that's not the subject over here because maybe they're going to see that. They'll see the noise sukkah. There's someone not going to eat over here. What's the story?
With the old lady. No, with the chicken that the Vilna Goy never passed the day. But the person came to right before Shabbos and he said, okay, so he says it's trade. And then right afterwards, the person went to the Rav of the town and he passed it was kosher. So the Rav came to the Vilna Goy and he says, listen, he says, I know whatever, he says, but
I'm the Rav
over here and you make me look bad. So he said, so the Vilna Goy says, okay, then I'll come to your house and I'll eat the soup just to show that, whatever. So he came to the house and right before the Vilna Goy was going to eat the soup, some wax fell into the soup.
That he wasn't able to eat anyway.
And then the Rav saw that the Vilna Goy happened to be right.
Not necessarily.
No, Hashem made it that he couldn't eat it.
I don't understand the story because I think that here it's a beautiful story, but I think that a person, if the Rav holds that you're not allowed to eat it, so he's not allowed to eat it. Even the Kvodah Shel Rav, he's not allowed to eat what he holds as Asa. If he holds that as Asa, he's not allowed to. Akash on the story. Yes, okay. So we'd have to look into that sugya. If someone holds that as Asa, I think he's not allowed to eat where somebody else holds that as Mutter. Okay, but beautiful story. So here, this I thought has something to do with that sugya, but maybe it doesn't because Rav Chisda, they saw what's over there. It's not that they're going to have to sit over there. They can go someplace else. New sugya. So we'll start the sugya. Just the Gemara goes on to tomorrow's Gemara. We're really 2 days behind, so we're not going ahead. But just get a little preview of today's sugya, and also maybe we'll have time to go a little bit further today. We spoke about a kinofas and a canopy and a klitin, a flat roof and a flat canopy and a slanty canopy. And the Mishnah says that in a flat canopy, you're not allowed to sleep in the bed under the flat canopy, but you may sleep because there's a separation of ohel between you and the schach. The sukkah is kosher, but you're not in the sukkah, you're under the canopy. And you are allowed to sleep in a bed that has a canopy or slanty canopy. Because a slanty canopy doesn't even have a tefach. It's ein lagag. It has like a thin pole that holds up the draping curtain to both sides. So you're allowed to sleep in it because it's not considered a gag. It's not considered a roof that's between you and the schach because it has no roof. It doesn't have a flat tefach. The Gemara is going to say that's one factor. If it's flat or slanty, if it has a roof or not, we'll call it a roof. A roof means a flat roof. The Gemara is going to say that there's another issue, another factor is going to be if it's above 10 tefachim or less than 10 tefachim. In the picture over there that Levi Yaakov showed us, it looked a little bit like it was even higher than 10 tefachim. That the Gemara is going to say not. That even if it's slanty, if it's 10 tefachim high, it's not kosher. It is considered a mechitza. What do you have over here? Less than 10 tefachim. So here the flat, thank you, the flat canopy is not going to be, it's possible, you're not allowed to sleep under there, even if it's less than 10 tefachim. Again, even though it's less than 10 tefachim, but it's flat from the ground, it's still possible because it's flat. And the other way that it's going to be a slanty roof, it's kosher, provided that it's less than 10 tefachim. It means one or the, you have to have, if it's flat, it's possible even if it's less than 10 tefachim, and if it's slanty, it's possible if it's more than 10 tefachim. It means you have to have you have to have both conditions. It has to be both no roof and also less than 10 tefachim.
This is a chumrah.
This is what in the Mishnah, you don't see, the Mishnah doesn't talk about 10 tefachim. The Mishnah says that flat is no good, slant is good.
Right.
And the Gemara says there's another factor, which is about 10 tefachim, that it's only kosher, even if it's a slanty roof, it's only kosher if it's less than 10 tefachim. One more issue the Gemara is going to bring in, which is going to like surface over the whole sugya, that's something called kavua. Kavua means if it's fixed, if it's established, if it's firm, and or it's made to take. I don't have a good definition of what's called kavua. What does it mean? That it means that it's fixed over there. It could be that it's attached to the bed, or that you leave it there the whole time. And maybe it's another one is that you always take it away. So I don't know the exact definition of what's called kavua and not kavua, but that's also the third factor. The Gemara is going to say that all things, both things, the kinofas and the nachlitin, both the canopies we spoke about, if it's flat or if it's slanty, is all talking about that it's kavua, that it's something which is established and fixed and firm, and it's permanent over there. So then we said this halacha that the canopy is not good even if it's less than 10, and the nachlitin is not good if it's more than 10. But you could have something kosher if it's going to be a slanty roof, and less than 10 is kosher. But you have to have both conditions in order to be kosher. But the Gemara is going to bring in now a third kind of an issue, something which is arai. It's only something which is temporary. Maybe you put it up every night, you take it when you're there, when you want. It's not something which is permanent. And that the Gemara is going to say that it's more lenient, and it's only possible if you have both sulim. It's only possible if you have that as both 10 tefachim and flat. Good? Let's say it again. The Mishnah is talking about things that are kavua. The kinofas and the nachlitin are both kavua. And therefore, it's possible only if you have two good things going for you. That it's no roof, only a slanty roof, not a flat roof, and also it's less than 10 tefachim. If you have either one of those two things, it's not good. If you have a flat roof, it's not good, even less than 10. If you have more than 10, it's not good, even if it's slanty. But it
wasn't in the Mishnah where you would have said it was not kavua.
Again. The Mishnah says kinofas and nachlitin, and it says that if it's flat, it's no good. If it's slanty, it is good. The Gemara says another condition, it has to be also less than 10 tefachim. The nachlitin, even if it's a slanty roof, it's slanty canopy, it's only kosher if it's less than 10 tefachim. But the Gemara is going to say something more lenient than the Mishnah. The Mishnah is talking about kinofas and nachlitin, both of them are kavua. The Gemara is going to talk about akila. That's the word it's going to use. Kila, kaf yud lamed hey. We'll see it right away. And that's something which is not kavua. I think it means, let's say you put it up every night. There's never you have to set it up each time. It's considered something which is very temporary. Over there, it's more kosher. It's only a problem if you have both things going against you. That both it's flat and it's 10 tefachim high. But if you're missing one of those two things, it's going to be kosher. You can have a kila which is less than 10 tefachim flat, and you can have a kilo which is more than 10 tefachim slanty, because it's not kavua. That what we just did now is the whole rest of the Gemara. Of course, more things will come in as we go along, but that's the main thrust of the next, the rest of the page plus the next half of the next page. So to continue. Amar Rav Yehuda Mashmuel, Mutar Lishan b'kila b'sukkah, af al pi sheyesh la gag. You're allowed to sleep in a kila. Kila is some kind of I don't have a good word. I need something besides a canopy because it has to be something which is very temporary. A tent or a net. Let's use the word a net. But a net, I don't mean to say that the problem is because it has no holes. It's something that you throw on when you want. When you don't want, you take it off. It's not something which is a canopy.
Like
something
a tarp over a tree branch.
a tarp. Okay, so you put we'll use the word tarp. That he's going to take something which is not fixed over there at all. So when the bugs are bothering him or something like that, when it's sunny, so he puts it over, but it's not that it's a canopy, it's not something which is fixed over there. So he says, you're allowed to sleep in a kila, in a sukkah, even though it has a roof, even though it's flat, as long as it's not 10 tefachim high. Which we just said, I gave the preview, so it's become simple already. I mean, the information is simple, but the Gemara is a big chiddush. And the Gemara doesn't know yet the difference between the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that nachlitin is true, it's good, even though since it has no roof, since it's not flat. But the Brisa says that it has to be not 10 tefachim. Tashma yashin v'kila b'sukkah lo yatsa decha b'asar. The Brisa says not like that. The Brisa says that you're not yosef in a kila. It's only a problem if it's 10 tefachim high. If it what did Shmuel say? That it's kosher even though it's flat, as long as it's not 10 tefachim. The Brisa says it's not yosef. That's because it's 10 tefachim. Mishnah coming up in the second paragraph. If someone sleeps under the bed, he goes under the bed. No room in the sukkah, he goes under the bed. So is he Yotzei? You're not Yotzei. So here it's like same thing. The more thinks it's the same thing as some kind of temporary covering, and it says he's not Yotzei because it's flat. Also, Shmuel says only when it's 10 tefachim high. So far the Gemara says that if it's less than 10 tefachim high, it's kosher, even though it's flat. Oh, here's somebody under the bed, Yashikoach, under the bed, and he's not. Don't say only because the bed is 10 tefachim off the ground. Yashikoach. Tashma, also against Shmuel. Oshe Piras Agabi Kinofis Psula. It says in the Mishnah that to sleep under a canopy is possible. And it's flat and it's possible. You're saying it's flat and you could sleep under it. First, the Gemara tries to say that a kinofis is only problem if it's 10 tefachim high, which I said the whole time not like that. I said the whole time that if kinofis are not good even less than 10 tefachim. But at this point, the Gemara doesn't know that. At this point, the Gemara thinks that it's only a problem when it's 10 tefachim high. But the Gemara says no, it doesn't say so. Well, we didn't learn like that. We learned in the Brisa that the flat canopy is not good even if it's less than 10 tefachim. The Tanya, naklitin shnayim, the kinofis are above. First, to explain what does it mean naklitin and kinofis. Naklitin means that only you have two holes on the two ends of the bed, which forms a slanty canopy. And the kinofis is that you have 4 holes at the 4 edges of the bed, and that forms a flat canopy. That's just translation. What is a naklit and what is a kinofis? Now it says, Pirush agav kinofis psula, agav naklitin shever. Same as the Mishnah, that the canopy, under canopy is no good, and under naklitin is good because it doesn't have a roof. Here it says beferish that even the naklitin, which is kosher, that it's a slanty canopy, is only kosher when it's less than 10 tefachim. And we could deduce from that the kinofis afal ain't given on a sarah. This is coming to where we said the whole time that a canopy that's not good when it's flat, it's not good even though it's less than 10 tefachim, and an achlitin, which is a slanty roof, is kosher provided that it's not 10 tefachim high. But either one is a problem. Either flat is a problem, even less than 10 tefachim, and higher than 10 tefachim is a problem, even if it's a slanty roof. And you're saying that a flat roof is kosher less than 10 tefachim. Here it says that a flat roof is not kosher less than 10 tefachim. So the Gemara says what we came to. Shani kinofis the kvi, that the kinofis is worse than a kila because it's fixed, it's firm, it's established over there. It's permanent. We use the word permanent. That the kinofis is permanent and therefore it's not good when it's flat, even though it's less than 10 tefachim. But my kila I'm talking about is that it's not permanent, and that's why it's kosher even though it's flat since it's less than 10 tefachim. The Marsa Kasha Vavisuka the kvi of Amashmul Kachera Kapsula. By a sukkah, a double decker sukkah over there, it's fixed, and Shmuel says over there that it's only possible when it's 10 tefachim. What's the kasha? I missed this kasha over here. Anybody could help me with this? I don't remember these words. What's this kasha over here? That the sukkah gabi sukkah, Shmuel says it's only possible if it's 10 tefachim. That means that if it's less than 10 tefachim, it's kosher. And you're saying that a canopy, if it's flat, less than 10 tefachim is a problem. Shmuel said by a sukkah is flat. A sukkah tachas is flat. That's the two layers. And over there it says that if it's less than 10 tefachim between the 2 layers, it's kosher, even though it's kavua. And you're saying that less than 10 tefachim also should be a problem if it's kavua. This kind of yes discussion before. You made this comparison. You said that before we said Shmuel said 10 tefachim, and he's saying before we talk about 4 tefachim. Sorry, you said something else. Okay, I'm sorry. You said about 4 tefachim, right? The 4 tefachim of the noise sukkah within 4 tefachim. I'm sorry, you didn't say it. But here the Gemara is asking the kasha. How come you said before that the sukkah tachas sukkah is only a problem when it's 10 tefachim in between? And here we're saying that if it's flat, it's considered a problem even less than 10 tefachim. The Gemara says no comparison. The answer is Hashem though nifsal sukkah basara. Over there we want to pass the sukkah because it's a sukkah tachas sukkah. So only if the top one is considered a sukkah. Less than 10 tefachim is not considered a livable sukkah. So you can't go with a sukkah tachas sukkah. Over there both schachas are kosher schach. They're both kosher schach. The only problem was that it was a double one. It's only considered a double one if the top one is livable. If it's less than 10 tefachim, it's not livable. But hachadil l'shavi ola, here you want to say that it's an oil, but simyasar nami ola. Once even less than 10 is an oil. Once it's 1 tefach off the ground, it's considered an oil. And if it's flat, it's a problem even though it's less than 10 tefachim. So far we have really some maskana ready. We have some more information now. And if everybody could continue a little bit to finish and to go a little bit further, we have to catch up to daf. So if we could go a little bit further today, I'd appreciate it. So far, but we got the halacha. Everything else is going to be pretty much in the same vein. But what did the Gemara say? That a kinuf and a achlitin, both of them are kavua. They're permanent kind of canopies. One is flat, one is slanty. And over there, it's only kosher if you have 2 things going for you. What they call tatil litivusa. 2 things that are good. That it's less than 10 tefachim and it's a slanty. So if you have a canopy, even though it's kavua, but if it's less than 10 tefachim and it's slanty, then you're allowed to sleep under it. But if one of those 2 things are missing, if it's higher than 10 tefachim, even though it's slanty, or it's flat, even though it's less than 10 tefachim, not yotzei. But the Gemara also introduced a kila. A kila is something which is not permanent. It's something which you put on whenever you want to, and it's not a permanent thing. So over there, it's only a problem if you have 2 things going against you. It's only a problem if it's 10 tefachim and also it's flat. But if it's missing that it's less than 10. Here the Gemara spoke about that it's less than 10 tefachim. It's kosher even though it's flat. The Gemara continues.
What's flatness have to do with it?
That it's only considered oil if it's a tefach flat. If it's not flat, then it's not considered a shipur oil. A slanting roof is not considered a roof. Only if it's flat. So we're going now that only flat is considered a roof. The Gemara didn't say it a tefach, but we're going to see soon that even a tefach flat means sometimes you might have a slanting canopy, but the top might be like 2x4. That then it goes down to the side, so it's too late already. That's considered a gag. The fact that it's one tefach, it has to be that it's a thin hole that drapes down right away, so you don't even have the tefach. The Gemara continues another application, very interesting. That here's going to talk about another application, which before we said that this thing about being in the sukkah, you can talk about you're covered by a blanket. Are you in the sukkah? So yeah, blanket is okay. A sheet is no problem. But as an ohel, that's the problem. The Gemara is going to apply this to Hilchos Kriya Shema. A person is not allowed to say Kriya Shema or bracha. He can't say Kriya Shema when he's naked. What's considered naked? He can be in a room. So he says the room's covering me. The room's not covering you. The room's called a room. How about if he has an ohel? Ohel is also not considered a cover. But when it comes down to a certain level, it's going to be called a blanket already. It means a sheet is not called naked. He's under the sheet. What's considered between the sheet is considered a cover, and what is it considered an ohel? And that's going to be the same thing as we talked about till now. And the Gemara is going to say whatever is considered an ohel by sukkah, that's considered that you're in a tent. You're not under a cover. You're under a tent under the sukkah, and that's considered not under the sukkah. The same thing is going to be as far as saying Kriya Shema is considered naked or not. So if it's considered an ohel, then it's considered naked. It's not allowed to say Kriya Shema. But if it's not going to be considered an ohel, so then it'll be considered he's covered, and he'll be allowed to say Kriya Shema. If somebody's naked in the kila, which would be probably natural what they were doing, that they had this covered. This was like their cover. They were in a kila. So most he takes his head out and then he can say Kriya Shema. Even though he might say that he's naked, he's not considered naked. He's considered covered. If he has his head inside, so then it seems that has a problem. It's called Ein of Roas Erba. That his eyes and the erba, then the same rishus, then it's a problem, and you have to have some kind of a separation. If he takes his head out, then it's okay. The old also.
That's the gargle.
So the gargle not necessary because he has clothing and he has some kind of an elastic. He has an elastic that doesn't need a gargle enough. But the gargle I wear is a beged yuchad tefillah, but not as far as erba there's no halacha. That even the elastic would be good enough to be considered a separation. So here happens to be paskin that you have to have Hebrew as erba is also a problem. That even if his eyes are not in the same rishus as the erba, but even the heart also. So we would say that's not enough to take out his heart. His head he'd have to take out until under his chest. That then he'd be able to say Kriya Shema because the part that the bottom half is covered by the kila, and the outer half is outside. He'll not say Kriya Shema. Motzi meisvei kasha from a brayso. Here it says that he should not. That's not enough just to stick his head out. He's still considered naked. It's only a problem if it's 10 tefachim high. As we said, that 10 tefachim high is considered it is considered an ohel. It's not considered a cover. It's considered an ohel. Same thing as by sukkah. And I also can prove that. It says, why should not say Kriya Shema? It's like he'd be inside the house naked and he sticks out his head. It's not enough to stick out his head out of the window because he's still naked. So too, this is considered an ohel. But if it will be less than 10 tvachim, then it's not considered an ohel, and he'd be allowed to say Kriya Shema, but it's sticking out his head. Or halachically, to stick out his heart also, so then it shouldn't be in the same issues. Shema Mina, the Gemara thinks that that's considered a good raya. And the Gemara continues. But the Gemara says, don't think that if you happen to have a house which is less than 10 tefachim, so you might think also that he's not sticking out his head. No, if it be a mamash house which is a solid structure, so then even if he's going to be sticking his head up and it's less than 10 tefachim, also it's considered still that he's naked. Or bias nami, or take out the word nami, or bias afal pish en gevor asor achibin dekvia or alahu velagom kinofis. We said by kinofis, we said by a canopy that's considered fixed. That even if it's less than 10 tefachim, it's also considered ohel. It's not considered a cover. So surely, if even by a kinofis, he wouldn't be allowed to take out his head out because he's considered under an ohel. He's not considered under a cover. So too by the house, surely that he'd be considered inside the ohel, even though it's less than 10 tefachim. So that's the end of the Gemara. What did we still go further if it's okay? Till when can we go today? Anybody? Any suggestions? Somebody say a time, and then we'll have
12:30. 12:30.
Any objections? Okay. Everybody. If anybody wants to leave, don't feel obligated. It's being recorded. If anybody cannot stay, so it's being recorded. You can hear it at your own leisure. So just to sum up what we learned, that there's something which is considered permanent, a kinofis, a kila, and kavachomer, a house, is considered kavua, and therefore it's only considered a cover and not an ohel if you have two conditions: that it's not a roof, it doesn't have a flat roof of 1 tefach, it's slanty, and also that it's less than 10 tefachim high. But if you have one of these problems, it's considered an ohel. If it will be flat, even though less than 10 tefachim, and if it's higher than 10 tefachim, it's not good, even if it's slanty. It's something which is considered not kavua, not permanent. That's called a kila, and over there it's only a problem if you have both problems. That is both higher than 10 tefachim and flat. But if you have either one, it's good enough. Less than 10 tefachim is good. And the next Gemara now is going to say also that even higher than 10 tefachim if it's slanty. The next words is lishna achrina. On the second line, lama lishna achrina. It's a big klal in the whole shas, which I think holds true. I think it's a klal in the whole shas. I think that when it says lishna achrina, not ikad amri, it doesn't mean that the Gemara is bringing down two opinions. Ikad amri means in Hebrew yesh omrim. Ikad amri yesh omrim, and that's like the Gemara is bringing down two opinions. And sometimes the Gemara will say, some say this, some say that. Lishna achrina means a different version. A different version means that there are two versions of the Gemara, not that the Gemara is presenting two versions. Like you say on the side, it says yesh garsin, or we say different gerso sometimes. So lishna achrina, even though it's going to be about 20 lines now, it's a different version of the following Gemara we just learned. The past Gemara we just learned, it's a different version. I'm pretty sure 99% that this klal is true. I didn't find it mamash in the Mefarshim, but I'm pretty sure that this is a different version of the Gemara. It means as if to say the printer is now talking, that lishna achrina is a different version that the Gemara says. Well, is it cool enough? Can be a little cooler? Lishna achrina, a different version of the past Gemara that we said. Amila, I'll just say it a different way. I'm Rav Yudah Shmuel. Mutal lishna b'kilas chasanim. They say kilas chasanim, which also is a kind of a kila, some kind of a canopy. Maybe chasanim used it more than others, but some take the gears out. Some have the gears at both times. Kilas chasanim. There's no difference between the kilas chasanim. It could be that it was made with a slanty roof. So it says you're allowed to sleep in it. Lefish ein lagam. See, before he's talking about a kilo which was flat. Less than 10 tefachim. Now we're talking about one which is slanty and higher than 10 tefachim, which we also know the answer already with the interview, the preview that we gave before. So it's already covered this already, that since it's not kavua, so even though it's higher than 10 tefachim, as long as it's slanty, it's okay. That's what this Gemara is going to say. The first Gemara said that if it's flat, as long as it's less than 10 tefachim, and this Gemara is going to say that if it's slanty, even if it's higher than 10 tefachim. That's what Shmuel said, according to this version, and they don't contradict each other. Both of them could be true. Since it doesn't have a roof, it doesn't have a flat roof, it's slanty, even though it's 10 tefachim high. The Brisa says that now that it has a roof, so it's flat and 10 tefachim is no good. Same Brisa says before that an aklita means it has 2 poles and it's a slanty roof. Kinofos means it has 4 poles, so it's a flat roof. Canopy flat if canopy is not kosher. If it's slanty, it is kosher. Same Brisa says before that even the naklitin has to have 2 conditions, that it should be slanty and also not 10 tefachim. And it's hagavon and mitasar psula. But if it's but if it's 10 tefachim high, it's possible even though it's a slanty roof. Shani naklitin likvi. That's the Gemara says that we said before the whole time, that if it's kavua, then it's not good. It has to have 2 conditions to be good. It has to be slanty and also less than 10 tefachim. But the kilo is not kavua, and therefore it's kosher, even though it's more than 10 tefachim. If we have a lucky kinofis, this Gemara is a little bit hard. The Gemara says, so what's the difference between a kinaflit and a kinofis? So the obvious answer the Gemara should have said, this is flat and this is slanty. The Gemara doesn't say that. The gabi and a kinofis lo kvi, the gabi kila kvi. It's something in between. It's more kavua than a kila, but it's less kavua than a kinofis. And all the Rishonim here, the Rishonim, everyone goes to town over here. But the Gemara should have said simple, that this one is flat, that this one is slanty. So ayin sham. The Gemara continues. He said a new chiddush against everything we said. You're allowed to sleep in a kila that has both chesronas. This we didn't hear till now. That is 10 tefachim high and also is flat. This is like how does this come in? We said so far that even the most lenient tequila, it has to have at least one thing going for you. It has to either be slanty or less than 10 tefachim. But here it's both 10 tefachim and also flat and still it's kosher. Come on, Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara says it's a new shita. I'm going to pass like him. He holds like Rabbi Yehuda. He holds that since the sukkah. We said before that sukkah is all arai, but he holds sukkah is a keva. which we don't hold like. We hold the sukkah is considered a temporary dwelling. He holds that a sukkah is also a permanent dwelling, and he's going to say that new yesod lo asi ol arai imubata lo keva. That when you're in a temporary dwelling that's within a permanent dwelling, then the temporary dwelling is not going to interfere with it. You ask somebody, where are you? You're not going to say, I'm in this little tent. Someone puts a tent into a house. They go to the kids like to do that sometimes. They're playing tent inside the house. So what are you in? He's inside his tent. We say, no, you're not inside the house. You're just playing tent, but you're not really inside. So the same idea here, that he has, since the sukkah is considered a Sivas Keva, the sukkah is considered a permanent dwelling, so the temporary dwelling does not interfere. And he would hold that all these things we said are no good. These kinofas and everything, Amita, we're going to say that it's not a problem according to Rabbi Yehuda because the sukkah is considered a permanent dwelling and everything else is considered temporary, and therefore wouldn't be considered a interference. We happen to hold that a sukkah is also Diras Arai, and therefore all these things would interfere. This is Mishnah coming up when we go to the second paragraph. This is about sleeping under the bed. The picture that Yaakov showed us, someone sleeping under the bed. So we said a problem that it is a problem, that it's 10 Tvachim is a problem. But the Yehuda said it's not a problem. We used to sleep under the bed in front of the elders, and they didn't tell us anything. So since he holds that the sukkah is considered a diras keva, a permanent dwelling, and the bed is considered a diras arai, it's not considered a permanent to be under the bed. So therefore, you yotze. But that's only according to Rabbi Yehuda. We don't hold like that. But they should have said openly. Should have said Allah like Rabbi Yehuda. Why did he have to say that this case is kosher? He should have said Allah like Rabbi Yehuda. We would have known that. Yam Allah Rabbi Yehuda have amen hani mili mita the lagabasuya avokila the tochasuya emalo kamashmalan. You might have thought. Kamashmalan line time Rabbi Yehuda lo asiyal arai bata lo keva lo shnamita lo shnakila means that the case of Rabbi Yehuda said is by a bed. There might be another svara altogether, different reasoning why you might think that under a bed is not a problem. Because what is a bed made for? A bed is not made to sleep under it. A bed is made for it to sleep on top of it. So it's not considered at all. It's a svara to say that a bed is not because the sukkah is considered a permanent dwelling and the bed is a temporary dwelling, and therefore that doesn't interfere. You might think a different svara. You might think the reason I view this because the bed is not considered an ohel because it's not made to be ohel. It's not made to be under it. It's made to be on top of it. According to that, a kila, which is made to be under it, maybe it does interfere. So you have to tell us that the reason I've reviewed this because and therefore no difference if it's a bed or it's a kilo, even though a kilo is made to be a tent, it is made to be under it. But since it's only considered right, it doesn't interfere with the sukkah, which is a diras keva. But we don't pass like a Yehuda, we pass them like our mission in the beginning that you have to have a diras arai, and therefore the bed and all these things do interfere. And just to sum it up again, it's like we started the whole time that if it's kavua, it's only kosher if you have two things going for you, tatu and tigusa, that it's less than 10 and it's slanty, and if it's kavua, then you have to have both things going for you, that it should be less than 10 and slanty, not a flat roof. And also we compared to this halacha, we compared the halacha of saying Kriya Shema, what's considered a cover, what's considered an ohel, also will be dependent on the same thing. Whatever's considered an ohel by sukkah is considered an ohel by Kriya Shema, that is considered not covered. But if it's not considered an ohel, then the chor should be considered a cover for Kriya Shema. He's considered covered, even though it's not mamish touching him. But if it's not 10 tvachim, if it's not a roof, these things, so then also it should be the same koveya that it's considered covered. Next Mishnah. Hidla aleha esa gefen vesadlas vesakisos. All the kind of, we had this mentioned a page ago in passing. Here's where the Mishnah is that if someone took vines that are attached to the ground and he put it over his sukkah, he had 3 walls, and now he's schach. So instead of taking schach, he pulled the vines over the sukkah, and now that's going to be his schach. So stula. So this is the place where the Mishnah says that mechuber, something which is attached to the ground, even though it's kosher schach, but that's only once it's detached. But if it's attached to the ground, it's possible. So you have a grapevine, you could cut off the grapevine and then use it for a schach. But you can't have it to be schach while it's still connected to the ground. So gefen is a grapevine, glass maybe is a pumpkin. We said the other day, like Yaakov showed us a picture. Kisus is some kind of an ivy, I think, some kind of a growing plant, and you use that for the schach, possible. But if you have more schach kosher, which we said yesterday, last daf, we said that it's not enough just to have rov schach, it has to also be chavtan. You have to lower it and mix it in a way that it's not nicker. So then you have rov schach kosher, then it's good. And the schach possible becomes bottled to the schach kosher. Or you cut it off. If you cut it off, surely it's kosher. If you cut it off, it's not mechuber anymore. Now Mishnah says a new point. So we learned about mechuber. Now there are another 2 conditions in order for schach to be kosher. Then gdul menaras and misach chinbo. These are another 2 conditions in order to have schach kosher. That it should be something which is not vulnerable to tumah, and something which grows from the ground. If you're missing any of these conditions, they all are a problem. Something which is mechuber is not, if it's connected to the ground, it's puzzle. If it doesn't grow from the ground, it's not kosher schach. It has to be something which originally grew from the ground, kedula min hakarka, and also it has to be something which is not vulnerable to tumah. Means if it was made into a kli or something like that, then it wouldn't be kosher. Like we had some examples. You had clothing, even if it's made out of linen, which grows from the ground, but once you made it into clothing, so it's vulnerable to tumah, so it's not kosher for schach. So the three conditions are that it should be detached, it should have grown from the ground, and it is not vulnerable to tumah. So the Mishnah said katzatzan. Top line it said katzatzan, that if you cut off the vine, it's kosher. So that's pashut. If you cut off the vine, surely it's kosher. But the Gemara wants to know, how about if you put it onto the sukkah and then you cut it off? Means we have a cloud. You should make a sukkah. Sukkah stasa lecha. Chag sukkah stasa lecha. And we have a cloud. Whenever it says tasa, it says lo min ha'asik. It shouldn't be that you didn't do an act. You made it automatically become kosher without doing an act. I'm looking for an example. If anybody has a good example for this cloud, I'd like to use it. Till we get a nice example, I'll just say my simplistic kind of example. Let's say somebody writes something called invisible ink. There's invisible ink. The kids use it in all kinds of things, maybe whatever other reason they use it for, but for a game. So you write and you don't see anything. Then later on, either it dries or you put it into the sun, whatever it might be, or you rub on it, whatever, and then it becomes visible. So that's not called active writing, because when you wrote it, it didn't have any result. And then when it comes the result, you didn't do it. It happened by itself. Or it came in directly. You did something to trick or something, that made it work. So also by sukkah, you have to place the sukkah, the kosher schach onto the sukkah. Here, he took pasal schach, he put pasal, while it was still connected, he put it onto the sukkah, and then he did something to make it kosher. So is that good enough? So the pasha should be no, because tasev lo min also. You should make it, not that's already made. So if you put pasal schach onto the roof, and then you cut it off, so I didn't do an act of placing schach on the sukkah. I placed pasal schach, and then I made it kosher. So maybe that's a problem. That's going to be today's sukkah. Yosef was sitting in front of Rav Huna, and he was saying, Rav Yosef was saying, and we're going to see that even though it sounds like he's a Talmud over here, but he wasn't such a Talmud, he was able to argue with Rav Huna also, or to speak to him with pretty strongly. But Rav Yosef said, on this mission that says that if you cut off the schach, the vines, it's kosher, but Rav said that if you move it, means that it's kosher schach now, but you have to move it in order to play, as if to pick it up and put it down again, in order that I placed the kosher schach on the sukkah. But if I don't place it, just even though I made it kosher now, that's not good enough. It's not good enough because I didn't place it on the sukkah. It's kosher schach now, but I didn't place the kosher schach. Rav Huna said to Rav Yosef, Shmuel Lamra. Shmuel said this. You quoted Rav, you quoted Rav, Shmuel said it. So Rav Yosef was not happy with what Rav Huna is telling him. I said Shmuel didn't say it. I said Rav said it. So you say Shmuel says Shmuel also said it. Why are you arguing with me? I've been Rav Yosef Lape. Rav Yosef turned his face like as if in anger. Did I say Shmuel didn't say it? I'm a Rav, I'm a Shmuel. I said in the name of Rav, you're saying in the name of Shmuel. Fine, so everybody says that. Like, why are you arguing with me? I didn't say differently. I said Rav said it. You say Shmuel said, fine. I said, no, I don't mean to say that. Rav Huna said, I meant to say Dafka Shmuel said it. I meant to say that Dafka Shmuel says so, not Rav. The Rav would hold that as kosher even without picking it up and putting it down again. Why is that? So the Gemara is going to go now into a sukkah that's called that, even though we said you have to do an act of placing the sukkah, who says that cutting the vine from its attachment, maybe that's also considered a chashava act of placing. That's also called, maybe that's considered, I placed it. How did I place it? It's true that I have to do an act. Maybe that's considered also an act of placing the sukkah. It could be yes, could be not. That the Gemara is going to see room for discussion. That if you put the pasal schach on, and you cut it. So maybe the cutting is considered an actual act of placing the sukkah. I think Gemara is going to bring another example of that. There is such a svara, and the Gemara is going to say Rav holds that as kosher. Shmuel does that as possible. We're going to pass him like Shmuel, I think. That, 1 second, I think he passed him like Shmuel. Yeah, that you have to actually pick it up and put it down again. Not like Rav. Rav will say that as kosher. We pass like Shmuel that you don't say k'tzitzas and zu'asiyas, and you don't say the cutting it is considered placing it, and you have to do it again. But Rav holds that as kosher. How do you know Rav holds that as kosher? The Gemara now is going to go to a different subject, very interesting, a case of tzitzis. How to make tzitzis. If anybody ever made tzitzis before, so you take a beggar that has a hole in it, or 4 holes, and you take 4 strings, you put it through, and then you tie them, and then wind it around, tie it again, wind it around. What if you took 1 long string, and you folded it in half? So how many strings you have now? You have like 2 strings. and then you folded it again. Now you have 4 strings, and you put it into the hole as is, without cutting it into all those strings. You're supposed to have really 4 strings, and put it into the hole. You took 1 long string, you doubled over again, put it in as is. So you get everything hanging down. You even have 2 end pieces that you could use to tie around. And oh, very good, Yashikov. Thank you very much, Levi Yaakov. Beautiful. Everybody sees that you. No, I'm not sure if that's the right one. No. Okay, I'm not sure, but it would have been one picture, one corner, one. Oh, this is it. That's it. Thank you very much. Hey, you see it. You see that he made the tzitzis, but he had not separated the string. He took one long string that he doubled over twice, and then put it into the hole, and then he made all the knots and whatever you have to do, winding around. And then you don't have 8 strings hanging down. They only have 2 strings hanging down, and you have over there 3 doubles. And now he cut it. Mamash the same sugya. Now he's going to cut it, and now he's retroactively, not retroactively, he's going to do a trick, so to speak, to make it kosher. So the question is going to be, Mamash the same sugya. Do you say that cutting it now, is that considered now I made it, and it's kosher? Or do you say no, that you made it possible? Now you did a trick on the side to make it kosher. Very nice. Thank you. So we're going to say that Rav holds that as kosher. He put in tchelis, which means tzitzis, with tchelis also, into the beged of his household. Here it's a side point that his household sounds like his wife, and not his sons, his wife. And that goes into a side sugya, which is not a sugya at all, a woman chayiv in tzitzis. So we all women are chapatir in tzitzis because it's a mitzvah says as my grandma, because the night is not chayiv in tzitzis, so women are not chayiv. So some side point that he holds night is yes chayiv in tzitzis, therefore women are chayiv in tzitzis, but it's not our sugya at all. The point is, Talan he put them in, but he had not cut off the ends. It means he took just 1 long string, doubled it over again, put it in, made the tzitzis, and then he's going to start cutting it. He came to Rashi, that's what he should do. He went to somebody, Rashi, he told him, Rav holds that now you can cut it. You can cut it now. So what do you see? And you see that cutting the tzitzis is considered now that you're making it. So too, even if you put the vines over the schach, over the sukkah when it's still connected, but if you cut it off now, that's good enough. You can cut it off now, that'll make it kosher. So Rav holds that it's kosher, Shmuel holds that it's possible. And now we have machlokis. Rav holds that it's kosher, Shmuel holds that it's possible. The Gemara is a kasha, does he hold that it's not kosher? But Tani Shmuel, Shmuel, that's Shmuel over here talking. Instead of the name, price the name of Chia. Like Yaakov, if you can put the picture on now, this is the case where he has 2 corners. He put both corners together, and then he cut them from each other. Like Yaakov, do you have the other picture over there? Thank you. So he made a double. What did he do? He took 4. Let's say he took 4 long strings. It doesn't have to be everything is connected. He took 4 long strings. I don't know what he did over here. Here they took one long string, and they made it big enough for a double, and he made everything. It didn't have to be so extreme. It could have been they took 4 strings, but he put it in one hole, out the other hole, and then he tied each corner by itself, and then they're still connected. The 2 sides are connected. Now he's gonna tie them. They put both pictures together. It means they made a double header of both, not even cutting off one corner on itself either. They didn't have to do that, but fine. Yashikov. So over there the case was Tanya Priya. Sorry, it takes time to get back. Maybe I'm doing something wrong over here. Maybe I can get back easier. Okay. So what happened over here? If he put on the tzitzis on 2 corners simultaneously with 1 string, and then he cut it. Kesherin, the Brayso says that that's kosher. So Shmuel is the one who said that you don't say psikas and zuas yasan. So how come here he holds that as kosher? Shmuel himself says that's kosher. My love kosher. What does it mean that he say that it's kosher? Doesn't mean that it's kosher. What does it mean? The word kosher here, kosher. I don't get it. Kosher means to tie. Okay, doesn't mean that even if he tied it and then he cut the ends, isn't that also kosher? So that. The word kosher is good. We don't have to have a lot of koshers over here, but isn't that also in the Brayso saying that it's good? And you Shmuel say You don't say psikas and zuasiyasan. The Gemara says no, it doesn't mean that. No, it doesn't mean that. Sheposek v'chakoshe means that if you put the string, not that you tied it, you just put the string into two corners, and you didn't do anything else yet. So now we tell him you can still cut it and then continue. But if you tied it and then you're going to start cutting it, then it's not good. Like Yaakov, I don't know if you have a picture of this, but if you do, it also would help us. That he just put the string into two corners, a long string, and he put it into one corner and then into one hole, out the other hole, and then he's gonna ready to do the tzitzis. We tell him cut it before you continue making the knots. The Gemara says that's kosher for sure. So why not? No, not yet. Any other pictures? No, also not. Also not. That's all you have. Okay, they didn't put this one. You put the string into two corners, and then.
Yeah, that's the only one I have. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. You're doing your best, okay? And so the Gemara says on the bottom, if you're going to cut it before you're going to tie, what's the chiddush? Why is there chiddush over there? Ma'aritema, next line over here. What am I doing over here? I lost it. Oh, let me put it on from the base. Let me try to get it a second. Is that on the screen yet?
No, we're not saying anything.
Okay. You might think that when you put the strings into the holes, it already has to be only one corner. Maybe you're not allowed to put the strings into two corners. It has to be one string per corner. And here that you put one string into two corners, you might think that it's possible, even if you're going to cut it, Kamash Malan. But the Gemara still holds by the Machlokes, Rav and Shmuel, if you can cut it after you put it on, after you tied it, if you can cut it or not. The Gemara just finishes off. Meisvei, Akasha from the so tell them below what's how far is the Gemara going to go. Maybe we'll stop here. We got through to our. Okay, it'll take time still, so we'll stop over here just to. We're not. What do we do? We made up half a daf, and we have make up another 1.5. Okay, maybe every day we can do another half hour to be able to catch up. Okay, Yashikach everybody. The sugya today, the last sugya was about psikas as well. Yes, we hold that you have to pick up the sukkah schach and put it down because you don't say the cutting is going to be good enough. And the sugya before we chazed it about 10 times, so I don't think I have to say it again about you have to have the stanti and without the guy.
I do want to share just one picture. It was from yesterday, but it's a nice view of it. A nice puzzle sukkah.
It's hanging all this is hanging.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, these are talat that shows how it's on a vine.
This is all probably somebody's imagination, right? It's not something actual.
No, this looks like an actual picture. I think this is maybe how they grow them. I don't know. I really don't know.
They grow it hanging? Is that how they grow it? They grow it hanging?
Maybe because hydroponically or something.
Interesting how they, or they just wanted to visualize it and they made it as if.
No, I think they probably do this so that there'll be less bugs or something. Maybe it looks like this is plastic on the ground. I'm not sure.
There would be.
Might be Galayim, no?
What is that? Oh,
Might be Galayim.
Galayim. Okay, Yashikar, thank you for that.
Okay.
Okay, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Kaltev.